Hello and welcome to my podcast called Innervation. Innervation was inspired by my previous podcast, Silence, where over the course of 2 years, I ended up speaking with a total of 100 women from science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM. I kept all of my guests anonymous so that they could talk openly and honestly about their lives. We discussed their experiences, what they've learned along their life journeys, and their hopes and ideas for living fulfilling and contented lives. Because their identities were always kept safe, the conversations on Silence were always so raw and transparent, and we didn't just talk about being women in STEM, but about everything. The topics that tended to come up are the same topics that I discuss with my own friends and family, or my mentees, or I'm asked about after I've given a talk in schools and colleges. So I thought, rather than keep those topics within a very closed circle, how about opening them up to the world and putting it on a podcast? So what I've done is I've sifted through all the episodes of Silence to bring you my favourite sound bites about these certain topics. Each week on Innervation, I'll be reflecting on the perspectives that came up on these topics that I feel are actually pearls of wisdom and I found particularly provoking, inspiring and empowering, in the hope that they resonate with you too. This week is all about relaxing. Now, the reason why I decided to do a podcast on the subject of relaxing is because I'm always so highly strung. Like, I often do choose podcast topics that I need to hear myself, because I take the time to make this podcast. I'm curious about how other people cope with certain topics. And this week, and maybe the week before, I've actually been really, really stressed out and really unrelaxed, to the point where, I don't laugh anymore. Everything's taken so seriously. I'm trying to really control my reactions and responses and the workload. And, I just wind myself up so tightly. And there'll be certain things that happen where I realise, my gosh, I am really, really pent up and I need to chill out. I need to relax. And so, yeah, I think sometimes just recognising that we're not relaxed is enough to sort of change our mood in some way. And, that was kind of the first thing that happened to me with regards to sort of wanting to do a podcast topic on it, because I realised that part of the reason why I'm so exhausted and so drained and so stressed out is because I never build in time to relax. And, I often really envy people that are super chilled and super laid back and everything. And that is the vibe of my guest from episode 89. She's just so relaxed and, maybe she's pent up in other ways. But what I find ironic about life actually is that the things we relax about tend to come to us. And then the things that we're stressed about trying to get for ourselves don't come to us because we're so stressed about it. And, I often hear people say, just let go, just surrender, just let go, or calm, be fine. And I'm like, no, I have to fight hard for things. I've got to really push. I've got to hustle. And I never, ever let go and surrender, because for me, when I'm putting in loads of effort, I feel like I deserve that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And then I see people who are so freaking chilled out and then they just get what they want, without even trying hard. And there's definitely a lesson in there somewhere. But have a listen to this soundbite and maybe the lesson will reveal itself. So this from episode 89.
Well, I don't think I knew everything from the beginning. I think I'm very intuitive. And I don't know. It was very strange because I married really early. From
How early?
23 or something. But I never thought about getting married in my life. So because my parents were very relaxed. They were not married. They came from other parents.
Wow.
So my background was not thinking about marriage. It just happened. And okay, let's do it. it's very intuitive, and it happened. And then my husband really wanted to have kids early. I don't know. He was very focused on having early. And I was like, well, it's not very good. I'm doing my PhD. But then I start thinking when it's going to be a good time. And then I realized was when I retired. And so then I realized, okay, let's do it. It was a bit like this. So I don't think I'm not very, I do not control much. I just go, I think, after what drives me, I think.
There's definitely something to be said about letting go and letting your gut lead you and listening to your intuition and waiting to feel what's right. And, you know, I confess I'm really rubbish at doing that. Like for me, I'm always trying probably a bit too hard. Like I'm always really, really fighting for things. Like I'm definitely a fighter. And, you know, to be fair, I've achieved a lot, but it's been so stressful getting there. And it is quite funny, like listening to people who are totally chilled out. And, you know, on the subject of relationships, for example, you know, a lot of people put a huge amount of effort into dating apps and meeting people and trying to sort of like meet people and getting their friends to introduce it. You know, a lot of effort can be put into the goal of trying to be in a relationship. Or you can just kind of like chill out about it. And like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And if it does, then great, kind of thing. And I'm typically the type of person that's always pushing and pushing and pushing. And I don't necessarily get any further than someone that doesn't push. And so I love the sort of sentiment of that guest from episode 89 because she's just so chill. And I need to be around more people like that because, you know, when I'm around very competitive, driven people, it makes me more competitive and more driven. And, you know, sometimes I can just spiral out of control like a wind turbine that's in, you know, gale force winds. I need to sort of like know when to put the brakes on and to just go, do you know what? This is actually out of my control and I should just really leave it to the universe. But I think it's really difficult for ambitious people to do that, to be fair. And so, you know, but I think awareness, as I say, is such an important step to getting there. Sorry, guys, but one of the major topics that really make women very irate is the subject of motherhood. More women than men tend to get very stressed about it. You know, we have a very limited time over which our body clocks work and allow us to have children. And it can be quite a sore subject for many women, particularly as they get older and their biological clocks are running out. And so I love the sentiment of my guest from episode 47 because, you know, she just is chill about it. And I wish there was a way of chilling out about this subject because, you know, I do know a lot of women who are very worried about this. And I think it's a lot to do with societal expectations because there's so much pressure on us to tick all of the boxes. Like, have you had children? Have you had an amazing career? Have you got an amazing education? Do you have a great partner? You know, like there's just so many boxes that are meant to be ticked. And the motherhood one is a really, really difficult one. I am definitely of a generation where I didn't get it figured out. And actually, this guest from episode 47, which you're about to hear, and the guest before from episode 89, they're both people who had generations before them paving the way. You know, this idea that the previous guest's parents, you know, were not into marriage, weren't married, they were very chilled out about it, I think really helps for the generation to come because, you know, for me, I come from a generation where there was such a lot of expectation and such a lot of pressure, and maybe it was a cultural thing as well. And I think the younger generations are able to do more of what they want and are able to make decisions for their own lives. I come from a generation where decisions were made for us. Maybe it is actually cultural, because definitely Asian families, from what I've experienced and heard, we do tend to really put a lot of pressure on our children to follow in the footsteps of generations before them. And that can really make a person unrelaxed. That can really stress us out. So I think it's good to sort of like acknowledge that all of these decisions about our futures are really up to us. And it's really important to acknowledge that, I think it's really important to be responsible for our lives as early as possible. I really think the sooner you can become responsible for yourself, the better, because, sometimes parents can wrap their kids in cotton wool and really not do their kids any favors, because, they're doing all the decisions, making all the decisions for them. And yeah, so the more grown up you can be, the earlier, the better, I think. That's just my humble opinion. But anyway, this from episode 47.
I have children late, so I'm not like necessarily worried about my biological fertility or any of those sorts of things. But I've just sort of chilled out about it. It's just been meh. I don't even know how to describe it. It's it's just sort of a, if it happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, it's fine too.
Yeah, there are other sound bites about the whole subject of fertility, and actually I should probably do a whole podcast on it, because, it really is a big deal. Like, I just want to put that out there. Like, it really is a big deal for us. Like, this idea that our bodies were designed to create the next generation. I mean, everything about our bodies is about procreation, and the idea that we don't do that, I think, can really stress a lot of people out. It certainly has, for me, stressed me out, this idea that, I would love to sort of have a child and be a mum, but I've also been sort of reared to be ambitious and to be driven and to achieve and to accomplish. And so trying to balance both is really hard. And what I have come to the conclusion of is that every woman has a role. Some women want to do it all. Some women actually just want to pick and choose. And some women don't want to have to tick every box. And I think it's well within our rights to decide. But that has really required me to be very grown up about it, because for a long, long time, I put a lot of pressure on myself to tick every box. And now as I get older, I'm like, well, okay, you didn't tick every box and that's okay. Whereas before I was like, you didn't tick every box, like you're a failure. And so, that's been a massive learning curve in itself. My guest from episode 23 talks about this and gives her opinion on it.
It extends the timeline for what you can do when, in a way that no other decision in your life really can. And it sort of makes it possible for you to, compared to maybe other female friends of my acquaintance, I'm far more relaxed when it comes to finding the right partner at the right time than some of my other friends who really do want to start a family and to have kids naturally, feel a little bit more pressured.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of interesting, that guest, because I know her, personally, and what was interesting is that she always was very relaxed about everything. She was like, yeah, I don't really need to be in a relationship. I don't need to have kids. I actually don't want them. Not bothered, couldn't care less. And she, has a partner now, a very serious partner. They're getting married. They'll probably end up having children. And so, that old cheesy saying of like, when you stop looking for it, it finds you. Or that idea of like, the minute you stop chasing, you'll get what you want kind of idea. And I think that's very closely linked to being relaxed, because I think and gosh, I really, really need to hear this today because I am so unrelaxed all the time. Like I'm always sort of telling myself that I'm not doing enough, and I'm always telling myself that I could achieve more. And, you know, like, I mean, this is a great example. I've got like an hour or so off before I've got to do something. And one of the ideas was to just go relax, have a bath, you know, switch off and everything. And I was like, no, I need to record my podcast. And so here I am recording a podcast and not giving myself that chance to just have some downtime. And that is the story of my life. Like whenever I've got downtime, I'm like, there must be something on a list somewhere that I can tick off. And yeah, it's just, it's not cool, you know. At first, I used to really pride myself on being like that and sort of really enjoy getting loads done and almost boasting to myself like how much I've achieved in a day. And now I just think that's kind of sad because the only one that really is deprived is me. You know, I may have loads of stuff done, but, you know, I'm running myself ragged. And so the idea that I'm sacrificing the opportunity to relax in favour of having a to-do list, you know, as long as my arm ticked off is not cool. And I think age teaches you that because, you know, the older you get, the more tired you become. And you just think, hang on, my quality of life is going downhill because I'm doing so much. So yeah, maybe I'm just from the wrong generation. Or maybe I've just come from a generation that had some really strange ideas. Because I think young people today, oh God, I sound really ancient. I kind of am. But younger people today are just like so much more chilled and so much more laid back. I mean, I don't know. I was the generation where people were like desperate to get into Oxbridge and were desperate to get amazing qualifications and desperate to get amazing jobs and earn loads of money and things like that. And I don't know, maybe it's something to do with the pandemic as well. Like people have just started to really ask themselves what's important in life and do unusual things. You know, I was in that generation of like, you know, all the luxury goods and the fast cars and the amazing holidays and, you know, all those kind of showy things. And I find younger generations not really as showy, which is kind of weird because we are living in a social media age where it's so easy to show off. But I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but times have definitely changed. And my guest from episode 100, the last episode of Silence, really talks about the differences between different generations.
Young people, I think, are more accepting of their differences and their, but yet their behaviours are very similar in that there's much more tolerance, there's much more respect for each other. And you're right, it is cool to be different. And I feel much more relaxed even now at my age with myself and who I am than ever I was probably 20 odd years ago, because that I'm working with a lot of younger people now, and you kind of think, okay, yeah, it's okay to do the things that I do and to talk about the things that I do, you know, and yeah, it does seem a much more diverse and much more accepting community.
That's true. I think generations of today are more accepting of each other's differences, I think, because we're able to see differences more clearly than ever before, thanks to social media. And people are allowed to have voices and do have and use their voices. And so we are able to see the variety of life, which is kind of interesting, because back in my day, there were only a few relatively few representatives of certain amazing things. You know, you had big movie stars and legendary people who kind of represented who we were as a humanity. Whereas I think today everyone can have a voice. And yeah, of course you get big names that represent trends, but essentially anyone can put themselves out there and can be known. And really it's whoever captures people's imaginations that become a trend. But anyway, what's that got to do with relaxing and being stressed? I think the reason why it relates is because, being yourself allows you to be relaxed. I think in the days of the icons, it was really stressful trying to live up to those expectations. Whereas today, I think people are able to relax into being themselves. And I think this idea of trying to be like other people or trying to fit your square self into a round hole isn't really cool anymore. I think what's cool is finding the courage to be yourself. And actually finding that courage can be really stressful. But when you are able to out yourself and exist in the world as you authentically are, I think that can really allow people to relax. I think not being relaxed correlates with caring what other people think. And, this is a real lesson for me. Not caring what people think would probably allow me to relax more. I really, really need to absorb that. Not caring what people think really will allow me to relax more. And I tell you, at my age, never has it been more important to relax, because I really feel the toll on my body when I'm not relaxed. And so, yeah, it's just getting more and more important to be able to do that. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from episode 60 that I think just really sums up the vibe of this podcast, which is, just let yourself be. Don't worry about what other people are thinking, and just really enjoy being in your own body. That's why I love meditation, because it really does let you kind of sit with yourself and develop that ease of being you. So this from episode 60.
Honestly, it's so weird, but my most relaxing moments are if I get on a really, really long train ride, stick my headphones on and just stare out the window for 4 hours. That is absolutely my idea of heaven. And it's like my brain just switches off. It's beautiful.
Or a plane where you really can't access your phone and things like that.
That is good. Planes are good. I think it's the motion of seeing things out the window for me. It's like something, your eyes are occupied, your ears are occupied. And so like all of your senses kind of have something going on, and you've got that constant motion kind of quieting down your physical sensations as well. And everything is just very, very gentle, and it allows your mind to just kind of relax because there's nothing disturbing coming in.
Yeah, it is really hypnotizing. I've actually taken so many trains recently, and I really understand what this guest is talking about. This idea, now none of us can really travel anywhere. Hopefully that will change soon. But this idea that traveling around the UK has just been really wonderful, and getting on trains and kind of being at ground level and just watching the world go by is really, really relaxing. But it doesn't have to be that. There are so many different ways to relax. Sometimes it can just be sitting on a chair doing absolutely nothing, staring at a blank wall. And the idea of just stopping, I think that's what it is, just stopping doing. I'm such a human doing all the time, and I just need to be a human being occasionally, just to get back in my body. And I thank you all for listening, because doing this podcast has really given me a chance actually to, for just a few moments, feel like a human being again, to be able to talk to all of you and to somehow feel united in a moment where we can really innovate, just like we do when we meditate. This chance to really fulfill from within and, just fill ourselves up with this sense of just being, you know, it can be really beautiful. Anyway, I wish you all a relaxing week and thank you for listening. Please do subscribe to this podcast and maybe even rate and review it if you can. I'd love to have your feedback about this episode or any others that you've listened to, and any suggestions for future topics for this show. It's all about self-discovery and evolution on Innervation, so be kind and loving to yourselves, and I wish you all a great week.